The mask always falls. For too long, America thought that what they said was always super important, that every scary warning, every fake threat would make other countries do what they wanted. But today, the story has changed. Today, India has stood tall, looked straight into the eyes of power, and show everyone that America was just pretending to be tougher than they really are. This showing everyone the truth is not just about catching someone in a lie, but it is about showing the real truth behind the fake shows of power. For years, the United States thought that no one could beat them, and that every country would be scared of what they said and do whatever America asked. This big-headed attitude was built on many years of having a strong army, being really rich, and believing that no country would dare to fight back against them. But being a big show-off is weak. It only works as long as others stay quiet. The moment someone dares to stand up to it, the fake tough act falls apart, and the world sees what is really there. That is exactly what happened when India refused to give in. When India showed everyone that America was just pretending to be tough through Donald Trump's words and actions. Trump's way of being a leader was all about trying to scare people. He thought that means speeches, scary warnings about punishments or threats of hurting their money would be enough to control countries. He brought this show-off attitude into world politics, thinking that countries like India would have no choice but to do what he said. But India showed the world that the time of America always getting their way is ending. The show-off attitude was shown to be fake, not through fighting, but through staying strong, being patient and being smart when India chose to do what was best for their own country without being scared of America fighting back. It sent a loud message India's stand for being their own boss, that power is no longer about who talks the loudest, but by who stands the strongest. This showing the truth was not just about Trump as one person. It was about the whole system of being show-offs that America had used for many years. The idea that America could tell every country what to do has been broken by calling out the fake tough act. India made it clear that true freedom to make your own choices cannot be bought, scared into happening, or tricked. Countries are no longer willing to be game pieces on a game board controlled by Washington. The show-off attitude of thinking they would always be the boss has met the reality of a changing world, where many different centers of power now exist. For Americans, this, showing the truth, brings a heavy cost. When show-off attitude is taken away, bad things happen. The cost of fake tough acts that don't work is paid not by leaders alone, but by regular people. Bad ways of talking to other countries leads to broken friendships, trade problems, and money troubles that spread through everyday life. Being a show-off may give a leader clapping in the short time, but when the fake face comes off, it shows a weakness that hurts how trustworthy they look to the whole world. India has shown that strength is not in loud announcements, but in steady action. And by doing so, it has forced America to face a truth it tried to ignore for a long time. What the world has seen is a turning point where show-off attitude has been put in its place, where loud bragging has been beaten by staying strong. The showing of America's fake tough act is not just a political event. It is a lesson in how power must change. No country can keep being the boss forever through scaring others alone. The show-off attitude of thinking otherwise has now been shown before the eyes of the world, and the cost of that truth-telling will shape America's future in ways it never expected. Power of reality comes out when fake things fall apart, and the truth becomes impossible to ignore. For a long time, America used words, scary warnings, and pretending, thinking that looking powerful was enough to control others. It thought that countries would do what they said simply because it spoke like they were in charge. But history has shown that when big talk meets the weight of reality, fake tough acts no longer work. Reality does not bow to speeches, and it does not bend to show-off attitudes. Reality forces the world to judge strength, not by noise, but by results, not by scaring people, but by staying strong. India, by standing firm, has shown that the power of reality is stronger than any scary warning America can make up. Trump, like many leaders before him, tried to use words, punishments, and warnings like weapons to make India do what he wanted. He used the fake idea that America's money power and army strength was enough to decide what happens. But India, the real cost Americans will pay, answered with a different kind of strength. The strength of waiting, the strength of being their own boss, and the strength of refusing to give up what was important to their country for getting approval for a little while. The power of reality showed itself when India acted based on what they thought was best, proving that no amount of American pressure could shake how strong they were. This reality hit harder than any political speech, because once it was shown, it showed the limits of America's power to change things. The world saw how weak things that look strong can be when tested by facts. Reality does not depend on how things look. It cuts through the noise and shows the truth underneath. America's fake tough act worked for many years because countries were not willing to stand up to it. But the moment India stood tall, the fake thing broke apart. Reality has a way of making even the most powerful humble, and this moment proved that being the boss built on fear cannot stand up to the force of real fighting back. The power of reality is that it cannot be ignored. Once shown, it changes the way the world thinks and acts for the American people. The crash between show-off attitude and reality brings bad results that cannot be hidden. Fake tough acts that don't work make people trust you less, and when people don't trust you, respect goes down. The power of reality shows not only political mistakes, but also how weak a system that depended too long on scaring people rather than working together can be. As reality changes world power relationships, Americans must face the truth that their leadership's words are no longer enough to make people obey. They must now deal with a world where strength is shared, not kept by one country. India's stand is an example of how reality works. It doesn't need to shout. It simply exists and cannot be said no to. By holding its ground, India forced the world to agree that being your own boss and making your own decisions are stronger than any outside scary warning. This is the main point of the power of reality. It shows truth, it makes people humble, and it changes the rules of how countries deal with each other. Where show-off attitude fails, reality lasts, and in this lasting lies the true measure of strength. India's stand represents a very important moment in modern world politics, where a country chose dignity over giving in, being their own boss over giving up important things, and courage over fear. For many years, the world was used to seeing America tell others what to do and others fall in line, often not wanting to, but having no choice. Trump, like many of his earlier presidents, thought that his words carried the weight of something that had to happen, that scary warnings of punishments, trade restrictions, or diplomatic pressure, global balance of power shifting, would force India to give in. Yet India said no. Instead of giving in to pressure, India made it clear that its decisions would be driven by what was best for India, and not by whether another powerful country liked it or not. This was not fighting back just to fight back. It was saying clearly that India had reached a point where it could no longer be bullied into giving up. India's stand was not about beating their chest or making loud announcements, but about quiet, smart firmness. It did not fight back with scary warnings of its own, and it did not look for support from friends. It simply chose to do what was right for its people, its money-making, and its safety. When Trump tried to push India into doing what he wanted, India showed that the world has changed. No single country can force its wishes on another forever. India stood firm in business talks, defense partnerships, and world forums, proving that being a partner does not mean being someone who has to do what they're told. This difference was very important, for it changed the relationship not just between India and America, but between growing powers and old superpowers across the world. This stand was a show of confidence, one built over years of money growth, army improvements, and world diplomacy. India is no longer the country that can be overlooked or forced around with ease. Its huge population, growing market, and growing influence have given it power that cannot be dismissed. When India refused to bow down, it wasn't just protecting what was important to them, it was showing the world a way of how countries can fight back against unfair pressure while keeping dignity. Other countries saw in India's response a model of being your own boss, a reminder that strength is not about staying away from confrontation, but about standing firm when what matters most is at risk for America. This stand was a reality check. For too long, it thought that scary warnings alone were enough to decide what happens. India's refusal messed up that belief and forced America to see that partnership cannot be built on show-off attitude for the American people. The cost of this realization is big, because every fake tough act that doesn't work makes people trust you less, and every shown weakness makes influence smaller. India's stand made clear that the world is no longer controlled by one country. The age of unquestioned obedience is over. This moment is more than a diplomatic episode. It is a symbol of India's rise. It shows a country willing to defend being their own boss at any cost and not afraid of facing bad things that may follow in doing so. India has proven that true strength lies in refusing to give up when principles and national dignity are at stake. This is what India's stand represents, a quiet but India's rise as a world player, powerful reminder that respect cannot be demanded through scaring people. It must be earned through both sides recognizing strength and being your own boss. Fall of influence is what definitely happens when power built on scaring people faces fighting back that cannot be made quiet. For many years, America had the image of being the unquestioned leader of the world, a country whose words could change policies, shift markets, and decide the direction of international friendships. Its influence was not only political but also mental, putting in countries a belief that to go against America was to risk being left alone or punished. Trump used heavily on this same influence, thinking that the weight of America's name was enough to force people to do what he wanted. But India's refusal to bow down has shown how much that influence has gotten smaller. The moment America's scary warnings failed to make someone give in, the fake idea of total control began to fall apart. Influence works only as long as others believe in it. Once belief is lost, the power behind it gets weaker. India's stand against American pressure showed this weakness. The world saw that a country could reject America's demands and still do well, still grow, and still get respect. This marked a shift in world thinking. If India can hold firm, why can't others? Influence is not about how loud a country speaks, but about whether others still trust its authority. America, by using fake tough acts and pressure instead of real partnerships, wore away the very trust that once made its influence so powerful. The fall of influence is not sudden, but slow, like cracks spreading through a foundation until the building begins to fall apart. Each failed attempt at forcing people, each fake tough act that gets shown speeds up the process. When India fought back, it wasn't just a fight between two countries. It was a signal to the world that America's grip is getting looser. Countries that once hesitated now see space to act with greater independence. Friendships that once went around American approval now look toward new centers of power. The fall of influence is not just about losing control over one country, but about losing the feeling of something that has to happen that once surrounded America's every move. For the American people, this fall has bad results that spread into daily life. Getting smaller influence means less power in trade, less ability to decide world prices, and weaker bargaining power in international negotiations. What once came easily through being the boss now requires giving up some things, and giving up some things often comes at a cost. Trump's fake tough acts may have gotten clapping at home, but internationally they showed weakness. Every time a fake tough act failed, America's influence got weaker, and the price of that weakness is paid by regular people through money challenges and less world respect. India's ability to stand up to pressure has made this getting smaller happen faster, not because it wanted to embarrass America, but because it put being their own boss above giving in. By doing so, India showed the limits of American control and highlighted the coming of a world with many powerful countries where influence is shared, not kept by one country. The fall of influence is not just about the past losing its grip, but about the future demanding a new balance of power. What once was feared has now been challenged, and in that challenge lies the truth that America's influence is no longer what it used to be. World shift is the big change happening right in front of our eyes, where power no longer sits in the hands of a single country, but spreads across many players who demand to be heard. For much of the last century, America stood as the uncontested leader shaping world politics, directing economies and deciding military friendships. But history does not freeze. It moves with the rise and fall of countries. What India has shown in its bold stand against American pressure is not something that happened alone, but a symbol of a much larger change. The world order is shifting, and this time it is not defined by one country's control, but by the shared strength of several. This shift can be seen in how countries now approach diplomacy. No longer are they willing to accept instructions from a single capital, no matter how powerful. They want balance, partnership, and respect. India's fighting back against Trump's scary warnings and fake tough acts reflects the voice of many countries who have long been looking for proof that America's word is not final. By refusing to give in, India has created momentum for a new time in which countries large and small are made brave to act in their own interest without fear of being left alone. The very act of standing firm against a superpower has inspired others to question the old order and to see that influence can be challenged. The world shift is also about money. Countries are no longer tied to a single market or dependent on one source of trade and investment. With Asia rising, with Africa standing up for itself, with Latin America seeking independence from old pressures, the world is making its connections more different. India, through its money strength and growing partnerships, represents this big change. The days when America could threaten punishments and expect total obedience are over. Now countries have other choices. They have new markets, new friendships, and new strategies that protect them from being trapped. This money diversification makes America's ability to control outcomes weaker and strengthens the determination of countries to chart their own course. The shift is equally about culture and politics. Ideas of being your own boss, making your own decisions, and equality are gaining ground against the old idea of control through scaring people. India's choice to act without fear is more than a national decision. It is a world statement. It says that the power to define destiny no longer belongs to one country. That leadership must now be earned through respect rather than demanded through fear. This is the heart of the world shift, the change from a time of one-sided control to one of many-sided balance for America. This big change is deeply upsetting. It means that its once unchallenged position is slipping not only because it is being opposed, but because the world is growing beyond the structures it once controlled for the rest of the world. However, this shift is an opportunity. It offers the chance for fairer partnerships, stronger cooperation, and a balance where no single country holds unchecked power. India's stand has simply lit up what was already happening. The rise of a new world order where strength is shared, respect is both ways, and influence belongs to those who can adapt to the reality of change. The cost to Americans is the hidden weight of every fake tough act that didn't work, every shown weakness, and every mistake in leadership. When Trump tried to use scary warnings and scaring against India, he thought that words alone would make a rising power give in. But when India stood firm, the fake tough act fell apart. And the bad results of that failure did not stay in the halls of politics alone. They spilled into the lives of regular Americans. Influence that once lost brings a price, and that price is paid in fewer opportunities, broken friendships, and growing uncertainty. What was once taken for granted as America's ability to control outcomes is now wearing away, and the bad effects do not land on politicians alone, but on the people who depend on stability for their daily lives. The first cost is about money. America's control in trade once allowed it to tell others what to do, but with countries like India choosing independence, the monopoly of American markets is getting weaker. This means fewer advantages in world negotiations, fewer good deals, and higher competition. When allies make their choices more different and turn to new partners, American businesses lose contracts, farmers lose markets, and workers lose opportunities. What once seemed like unshakable success now becomes easily hurt by disruptions. The failure of Trump's fake tough act against India showed that the world is no longer afraid of rejecting American demands, and that rejection turns into real money pressure for the people at home. The second cost is about being trusted. America built its power not only on army strength, but on the belief that its word carried weight. When a fake tough act is shown, that trustworthiness cracks for Americans. This means that their country's voice at world forums carries less certainty, that promises and scary warnings alike are doubted by others. Being trusted is like money in international relationships, and when it gets smaller, the entire country pays the price. Less trustworthiness means weaker friendships, less respect, and an environment where America must work harder to gain what once came easily. Another cost comes in safety. Influence once acted like a shield, discouraging rivals from challenging America directly. But when influence goes down, rivals feel braver, and allies begin to hesitate. India's fighting back showed that even close partners will not automatically do what they're told. For Americans, this means greater feeling unsafe, a world less predictable, and more strain on resources as their country tries to keep control in areas where its grip is slipping. The burden of keeping army presence, the cost of getting involved, and the risks of conflict rise as the cushion of unquestioned influence disappears. Perhaps the greatest cost is mental. For generations, Americans were taught that their country was the leader of the free world, the country others followed without question. But when fake, tough acts fall apart and influence goes down, that self-image shakes. Regular people are forced to face a reality where their country is no longer feared or universally obeyed. This creates frustration, division, and uncertainty about the future. India's refusal to give in has forced Americans to see that their control is not guaranteed, and that the failures of show-off attitude at the top will be felt by families, workers, and communities across the country. The cost to Americans is not just about stuff. It is the loss of the certainty they once thought was theirs forever.